Tell us about the moment when you realized photography is what you wanted to make a career out of.
Well, yeah, that moment came almost 20 years ago. I've been a full-time pro now for that long. And the moment came after my first year of law school. I took a summer job with a law firm in New York City, thought very much that I wanted to continue my legal education and then become a full-time lawyer. And at the end of the summer, this is the first time in my life I'd ever made any real money, I bought a camera. And very quickly, I realized I'd made a huge $100,000 mistake. That's the cost of my legal education. So I was hooked right away on photography. Absolutely loved it. And so probably within a few months, I realized that it was something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And it took me a while. I had to finish up law school, and then I had to work as a lawyer for 8 years to pay off my law school debt. But once that got cleared away, I started thinking about how miserable I was as a lawyer, how happy I was when I wasn't lawyering, when I was out taking photos. And so after 8 years as a lawyer, I came home one day and told my wife, I've had it. I just put in my 2 weeks notice. I quit. And her reaction was, wait a minute, you were supposed to be my sugar daddy.
So she didn't take it that well.
She was very supportive, so it actually worked out just fine. But I quit and I became I just kind of dove right in, plunged right into the profession of being a full-time professional photographer, and I've never looked back. It's been the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
I think that's just amazing how you're able to know so quickly that that was like the thing for you. I'm curious, what was like that first like subject you were shooting with your camera that got you so interested?
Well, so when I first got the camera, I'd always been interested in the outdoors. Growing up, I did a lot of hiking and backpacking and rock climbing and all sorts of outdoor adventure. And so originally I bought the camera for the purpose of just recording my experiences when I was out and about in the wilderness. And I just very quickly got hooked on it. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I've had a lot of hobbies in my life, and most of my hobbies have lasted for like 1 or 2 really intense months. And just ask some of my older friends about my bonsai tree phase. And it turns out that bonsai trees take a long time to grow, and that's a really long-term commitment. And I got bored after about 2 months of that. So all these other hobbies I've taken up in my life just didn't last long, but photography was different. There was just something about it that I connected to. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I'm not artistically inclined. I am really terrible at drawing or painting or music. I went through a heavy metal music phase, and I was really bad at that. So everything artistic that I'd ever tried, I failed at miserably. But something about photography just clicked with me, and I was hooked right away, and I recognized that I was hooked right away. And in the beginning, I was just playing around. I was just going out, taking pictures, walking around New York City, doing, some very rudimentary street photography, or taking the camera along with me when I went backpacking in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York or some of the other places I was visiting. And I wasn't really photographing with intent. I wasn't really doing it, with any sort of artistic purpose. I was just having fun with it. But it just became very obvious to me that it was something that I enjoyed doing. And I started dedicating more and more time to it. And before I knew it, it just had completely taken over my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting how like you kind of diversify and experiment, especially early on with like your subject matter, like you said, like hiking the Adirondacks or even shooting street photography too. Do you feel like that really kind of helped like hone your process early on?
I would say probably not early on, because after dabbling with a few different things, I very quickly decided that all I wanted to do was photograph the natural landscape. And so for a very long period of time, all of my photos were just landscapes. And I pretty much refused to photograph anything that had even the slightest hint of humanity in it. And so like if there was a little bit of a fence or something like that in the distance or a signpost, I didn't take a picture because I was very much a landscape purist. And I do think, conversely, that being that focused on a single type of photography was very limiting. And as I progressed as an artist, I started once again dabbling into other types of photography. So first, I started taking up wildlife. That was a very natural extension of what I was doing already. But still, I was kind of avoiding that hand of man. And then I dabbled in other areas. So I got into street photography a few years ago for the first time. And I really think that trying those different genres of photography was a really good thing for me artistically, because I think that when you get out of your comfort zone, when you try something that maybe isn't really what you're good at or inclined at, or something that is different from what you're doing, that's when you really learn how to see the world in a different way. It forces you to stretch and grow artistically. So I wish I had done more of that early on, because I think I would have become a better artist faster. But I'm glad that I made the decision about, 10 years ago to diversify and to embrace all different types of photography.